There was a time when religion existed, but truth was fading. Temples were full, prayers were loud, rituals were everywhere, but something was broken, and only a few could see it. They weren't kings, they weren't prophets. Crowds didn't follow them. In fact, they chose to disappear. Away from cities, away from power, away from corruption. They went into the desert and never returned. History would later call them the Essenes. These were not ordinary believers. They believed the system itself had already collapsed, not physically, but spiritually. Jerusalem, the center of faith, was no longer pure in their eyes. Priests were corrupt. Religion had become political. And truth, it had been replaced by control. So they made a decision, a dangerous one. They walked away from everything. Near the silent waters of the Dead Sea, they built a different life. Disciplined, simple, controlled. No wealth, no personal ownership, no distractions. Everything was shared. Everything had order. Each morning, before sunrise, they cleansed themselves with water, not for the body, but for the soul. Because for them, this wasn't religion. It was preparation. Preparation for what was coming. They believed the world was moving toward a final conflict, not just between nations, but between light and darkness. And they saw themselves on the side of the light. But here's what sets them apart. They didn't just believe this. They documented it. They wrote down everything. Their rules, their prophecies, their warnings. And then they hid them, sealed in caves, preserved in jars, protected from time as if meant for another age. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell. Wars reshaped the world. And the Essenes, they disappeared. No monuments, no kingdom, no legacy of power. Until 1947. A young shepherd throws a stone into a cave and hears something shatter. That moment changes history. Inside the cave, sealed jars, ancient, untouched, and within them, scrolls, thousands of years old, the Dead Sea Scrolls. When scholars examined them, they expected ancient texts. What they found instead raised deeper questions. The ideas preserved by the Essenes closely resemble themes that would later appear in the teachings of Jesus. Inner purity over ritual, community over greed, light against darkness, forgiveness, discipline, spiritual awareness, not identical, but strikingly similar, enough to raise a serious question. How did a hidden desert group develop these ideas so early? Some say coincidence. Others suggest influence. Consider John the Baptist, a preacher of repentance, living in the wilderness, the same wilderness associated with the Essenes. He practiced water purification, rejected corruption, called for moral renewal, parallels that are hard to ignore. And then there is Jesus. Between his childhood and the age of 30, there is silence, no detailed record, no clear account, just a gap. Where was he? No one knows for certain. But some scholars suggest those years may have included time in regions influenced by groups like the Essenes. This is not proven, but the parallels remain. The Essenes emphasized inner transformation. Jesus taught it. They rejected material attachment. Jesus lived it. They spoke of a coming kingdom of light. Jesus proclaimed it. Coincidence or shared context? And one final question. If the Essenes were so significant, why are they rarely mentioned? Why do they exist mostly on the edges of history? Perhaps because they avoided power. Perhaps because they rejected institutions. Or perhaps because groups that step outside systems are rarely preserved by them. Whatever the reason, they disappeared. But their writings survived, hidden for nearly 2,000 years, waiting to be found. So now the question is not just who were the Essenes, but also what do their ideas reveal about the world they left behind and about the one we live in today? If you were surrounded by noise, corruption, and distraction, what would you do? Stay within the system or walk away from it?